And we are live. So, guys, if you are able to see us and hear us, please give a thumbs up or just say yes, you can hear us. I know that there is a delay in the stream. Can you hear us? Just can you confirm? Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So, welcome everyone to another episode of the Ask Me Anything series, but we like to call it What Lies Beneath Ask Me Anything. And the reason is because we want to go deeper and discover what lies beneath. What is the story? What is the journey? And with me today is somebody who needs absolutely no introduction. He's one of the finest testers, one of the finest teachers, one of the finest researchers, one of the finest in almost everything that you can possibly think about related to testing. And you know, one of my gurus, James Bach. Welcome, James.
Hi, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. We have been trying to do this for a long time. Like I was saying that I wanted to do this for a long time, but finally, uh, things were right, and we had the right
My
message.
wife scheduled it.
Yes.
That's all it needed to happen. My wife has to schedule it.
That's what we missed the first time round. But now that we are here, let's get started. So, James, how and why did you start as a tester?
Well, I needed a job and I had a problem, and that is that I was completely burnt out as a programmer. I mean, I was so burnt out that when I got up to a keyboard, I would feel physically sick. Like I couldn't code because I was going to throw up on the keyboard. That's how burnt out I was. I was sick of writing code, but it was my only marketable skill. So I was out of work uh, at the time that somebody suggested that I send my CV down to Silicon Valley, which is about 200 miles away. So I got two interviews. One as a product manager for a video game company, and they turned me down. And then a couple weeks later, Apple Computer called up and they said, "Hey, how'd you like to be a test manager?" And I'm like, testing? Did they pay people to do testing? Really? You can actually work as a tester? I didn't know that. I'd never worked with a tester before. I didn't know there were such things. So I immediately thought, that sounds like a great idea, because here's what I thought testing was. You sit watching a bridge being built and you tell them, I don't like that color. Change the color. You put the bridge in the wrong place. Move it 3 feet to the left. I thought that's what testing was. You just tell them it's wrong and they fix it because you told them to. I imagine that's what testing was. So I went to the interview, and I was 2 hours late to the interview because my truck broke down over and over again on the way to the interview. As I was getting closer, it was like Zeno's paradox. I would get halfway there, and the truck broke down, and then I get halfway to the rest of it, and it broke down again, and finally it completely broke down, like 2 miles from Apple, and there were no cell phones in those days.
Yeah.
No cell phones. So I was stuck. But I was when I finally got there 2 hours late, they were so nice about it, and overlooked it, that I was the reasons why I was late, and I got the job, and I immediately was full of energy, So I proved that you can go from being totally burnt out and you don't even want to work to being full of motivation and energy overnight if somebody gives you the right job that you're excited about. And I was so excited about being at Apple. Boy, I would have chewed through a wall to work there. I would have done anything to work there. And, uh, that's the whole place smelled like hot buttered popcorn, which I didn't realize for 2 weeks is a bad thing. It's a bad thing because after about 2 weeks, now everything smells like popcorn. It gets in your clothes. It's like becomes this toxic smell after a while. But for the first 2 weeks, it was like, man, that hot buttered popcorn is everywhere. They had this huge popcorn machine. Anyway, I just loved working at Apple for the first few years, and I decided immediately that I wanted to become a fantastic tester. It was the first time I really decided I wanted to be good at something instead of just kind of doing something for money, but I wanted to be really, really good at it. And there was a group of 400 testers at Apple Computer in those days. There were 12,000 employees and 400 of us were testers. And we were all in the same building. And I loved that. It was the biggest test group I ever worked in, the first test group I ever worked in. But it was in 1987. It was right when they started this trend of getting rid of big testing groups. Yeah. And dividing them up and starting to go to this agile thing of why don't we just put testers in with developers? And what happened immediately is when we did that at Apple in 1980, around 1990, we started doing that, is the complete collapse of testing culture. Because we used to be all in the same building. We all were testers. We would talk testing all the time. We would have little conferences inside the building and at our desks. We had posters and people would come around and we'd have snacks and we would constantly be sharing ideas about testing. We had a real testing culture, and that just went away when they put us right up next to the developers. I mean, it's a good thing to be working closely with developers, but what that also meant is you were no longer working closely with other testers. And that's a dangerous thing for testing culture. I warned them about it. They shrugged and did it anyway. And so I got bored and upset, and I left Apple at that point and went to another company called Borland, which was really where I feel I learned how to be an expert tester was at Borland, because they were so hungry for excellent testing. They were hungry. They had management saying, do you have an idea of how to improve the test process? And I would say, I have some ideas. And they would go, implement them now. Do it. They would say, do it, do your idea. Whatever it is, do it. Everyone do your ideas. They were constantly pushing us like, what could you do better? We want to support you. So I ended up trying all kinds of experiments at Borland with automation, lots of different things with automation. Data-driven automation is commonplace now. I was creating it back then when it wasn't so commonplace. And model-based automation, I was doing that back then. I was experimenting with all kinds of things. Very exciting times. I'm still consulting and teaching based on what I was doing in 1992 at Borland International. And people are still like, wow, I've never seen anyone do that, because we had such an innovation culture and so much respect for testing in that organization. Anyway, here, I'll let you ask a follow-up question and direct me if you want me to. I can just keep going on and on. And
So we've heard the story of you being the youngest test manager at
I
Apple.
was really young. Yes, I was the
Yes.
youngest manager in the
Manager.
R&D
Yes.
division at Apple Computer. That's the thing I'm most proud of. That I was the youngest manager
But
that they ever had. But it certainly at that time I was the youngest.
but I'm more interested in knowing about your story of Microsoft. You did something,
Oh
and
yeah, I was. See, I worked. I was my first contract as a consultant when I went independent after rage quitting my last job that I ever worked as a regular job. I went independent, and I got this contract with Microsoft to help develop a formal process of exploratory testing for compatibility testing of Windows 2000. This was in 1999. So I learned a lot about Microsoft, and Microsoft put out a press release saying that we have hired testing expert James Bach to help us do this. So they have an actual press release from Microsoft saying test expert James Bach, right? Okay, so keep that in mind. So then a few years later, there was this big court battle against Microsoft, an antitrust lawsuit, very big and famous, and Microsoft lost the court battle. But then there was a disagreement about what penalty they should pay, and the government wanted to do one thing, and there were 9 states in the United States that didn't agree with the government, so they were suing the government to have more penalties for Microsoft. And Microsoft was saying, no, we don't need more penalties. We're fine. And the big thing that the states were saying is you should remove Internet Explorer from Windows and don't make it a part of Windows. And the same thing with Windows Media Player.
yeah.
Microsoft said, no, it can't be removed. If you remove it, the whole operating system will collapse. And
Oh,
also, nuclear Armageddon will occur because of the way we coded. You will actually have all nuclear weapons go off all at the same time. So they were just saying you can't do it. You can't do it. So what happens is the 9 states hired me. They came to me and they said, James, there's a product called Windows XP Embedded that lets you remove components from Windows. It looks like you can remove Internet Explorer too, and yet Microsoft is saying you can't remove Internet Explorer, but they're giving you a tool that lets you remove Internet Explorer. Can you test that and see if you can make an operating system out of Windows using the tool that where you remove Internet Explorer, but you include everything else and you have everything that's Windows XP except for Internet Explorer. So I investigated this. I hired a team. I investigated this for 2 weeks. I found out that you absolutely can do this, even though Microsoft says you can't. You know what I found? I found that you can call Microsoft tech support and ask how to do it, and they will tell you. That's what I found. And yet their CEO was swearing under oath that it's impossible to do. So I tested this and I figured out how to do it. And then I tested the operating system using Microsoft's own published stress tests to demonstrate that this was possible to do. So all this work took 12 weeks to do. And it was going on while this trial was happening in Washington, D.C. So they finally announced me. I'm going to come in as a big rebuttal witness in this case. On May 8th, 2002, I was in the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times and announcing like, oh, Microsoft has a surprise witness. And they called me a computer expert. I wasn't a testing expert anymore. Now I'm a computer expert. I got promoted by the newspapers to computer expert. And the story said things like James Bach has created a version of Windows. Well, I didn't exactly create the version. I used Microsoft's own configuration tools. Is what I did. But you know what? The first thing that happened is Microsoft immediately subpoenaed all of my work. So we put all of my work in a big like pallet in a shipping container or something, like a truck came and took I gave them a computer with all the work on it and all of the printouts and the discs and all kinds of stuff. And but at the last minute, here's what I did at the last minute. At the last minute, I pulled the power cord off the computer and I kept it. Now, here's what I thought was going to happen. I thought that they were going to take this delivery of all this stuff, and some technician who was supposed to, process my stuff would say, "Hey, there's no power cord here. Hand me a power cord. Pull the power cord off there," and then they would just plug in the power cord. So I just thought I was creating like 30 seconds of annoyance to Microsoft. But here's what happened. The next day, Microsoft's lawyers go into the federal courtroom in Washington, D.C., and they complain to the federal judge that I didn't give them a power cord.
Really?
They actually said, "Judge, he didn't give us a power cord. How are we supposed to look at this work? This is ridiculous. This shall not stand." And the judge is not a technical person, so she doesn't know this was just a generic desktop computer power cord, of which there are countless millions, and they certainly have plenty of power cords that they could use. Maybe she thought this was some sort of unique power cord. I don't know. But I now realize what happened is that lawyers must have told the technical people to make a list of every tiny little thing they could possibly complain about.
Yeah.
And they just brought that list in the next day into the courtroom. So I like to tell people, here's a fun fact about me. Microsoft once complained to a federal judge that I didn't give them a power cord. That really happened.
That is really fun. That is really fun. Well, okay. So if I go through your blogs and your conference talks, one of the term that pops out clearly is epistemology.
Epistemology, yes.
Yeah. And there's another term, pretty close, if I may say, called ontology.
Yes.
So, how do you see testing related to these two terms? First, epistemology, and second,
Well,
ontology.
if you might as well mention the third term, which is axiology.
Axiology.
These are the
Yes.
three big branches of philosophy: is
Yeah.
ontology, epistemology, and axiology.
Axiology.
Now,
Yes.
these three things represent. Epistemology is how can you know things? How do you know it's true? And immediately you see how that relates to testing. Because what testers are people who say, sure, it looks like it works when you poke at it for 5 minutes, you run the sanity tests, and it doesn't fail. You go okay, it looks like it works, but how do you know it really works? How do you know it will keep working and won't stop working? That's epistemology. How do you know? What would be a reasonable process to decide that something is what you hope that it is,
Right.
or what you fear that it isn't? Ontology is all about what is. What are the things that we're talking about? You need ontology to decide, is that the product I'm supposed to test? Is this the product? Is this part of the product? Is the user's fingers part of my product, or are they not part of my product? Is the screen, is the hardware my product or not my product?
Or the power
How you
cord.
divide things up, how do you model things? How do you decide what goes with what? The things to talk about, that's the realm of ontology.
Or the power cord. Is it a part of the product?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And how do you know I didn't give you the power cord, really? I mean, maybe I did and you misplaced it. Have you thought of that possibility? Apparently not. So, The third thing, axiology, is what matters.
Yes.
People's values. What do they care about? What's right and wrong? That's axiology. And of course, that relates to testing too, because we are trying to help people understand, is this product right for you or wrong for you? Or is it good or is it bad or is it getting better? So all three branches of philosophy are involved in software testing. And I feel like I'm an applied philosopher. I feel like I'm a philosopher who applies philosophy on a daily basis to the question of what's going on and where are we. And what's really funny is there are people. There's this people famously at Microsoft who strongly disagreed with me when I said that philosophy is important for testing and epistemology. The funny thing about that is that in order to disagree with me, you're going to have to make an argument. But if you make an argument, you're using philosophy to do it.
Yes.
So if someone says, I am going to prove to you beyond a doubt that philosophy is not important, you've already won the argument. You've already won. Because you're going to have to, you can only do it with philosophy, unless the only way you can win an argument without philosophy is punching someone in the face. Just punch them until they give up. Then congratulations, you've won a debate without using philosophy. But if you don't use force, you're going to have to use philosophy. And they both start with a "f" sound. So
Well,
there you go.
so talking a little bit more about philosophy, we spoke about epistemology, ontology, and axiology. What about sociology? Isn't that aspect
Well,
also a part of?
sociology isn't a philosophy; it's a science.
It's a
It's
science.
a branch of study, but sociology is all about studying people in groups, people in how do societies work, how do social organisms work. So the fundamental unit of study for sociologists is the community, the group, as opposed to the individual. And is testing a social activity? Testing is profoundly a social activity, because we're never testing for ourselves. We're always testing to help someone else who's hired us, someone else who needs the product to work. That's why we're testing. So testing is profoundly social. And when the fact that I study sociology, read about sociology, I talk to sociologists, it helps me understand things like for instance, just recently on the Test Chat channel, somebody said something about, we have to achieve 80% automation, right? And you said 80% of what?
Yeah.
Well, that's the kind of thing that it's useful to say if you're interested in what's called qualitative research. If you're interested in ontology, it's an ontological statement, but it's also a sociological kind of thing to say, because you're trying to say, like, well, if someone is telling you that you have to achieve 80%, why did they pick 80%? What did they think they were saying when they said that? What do they want you to really do about that? This is a social question. Am I free to ignore them when they say 80%? If I take it really seriously and I spend a lot of time working on this, will they come back and say, look, I didn't really care about 80%. I just wanted you to think about automation and do the right amount. I just threw out 80%. I didn't mean it to be taken literally.
Yeah.
That's a social interaction right there. If I know that my boss just sort of kind of throws out random numbers, and he knows that I know that, and he doesn't expect me to take him very seriously, but he expects me to listen to him a little bit, That whole calculation is all about the social order. It's all about, sociology. So that's why I also recommend that people learn about social science. Very, very helpful in testing.
So, if you talk about testing being a social skill, you've actually mentioned or you've said it. I think a lot of times it's also there on your blog page that there are seven kinds of tester. Let me see if I can get all seven of them. It's a test for me. So let me see if I can do it. So one is administrative tester, technical tester,
Yeah,
analytical tester,
yeah.
a social tester, emphatic tester, end
Empathetic tester.
user, and a developer. Did I get
Yeah,
all?
yeah, yeah. That's it. Those are the ones.
Okay,
Technical
so
tester was one of those. Did you say technical tester?
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
technical tester, the second one. So thankfully I remember. So my question is, can one person be only one of these kinds at a time, or we can be more than kinds of one kind of a tester?
You can be most of these kinds of testers at the same time, no problem. These are patterns. They're not. They're not pigeonholes. They're patterns. I think it would be hard to be a developer tester, that is to say, a tester testing his own stuff, and a user tester at the same time, unless you were developing a developer tool. So if you were developing an IDE, I guess you could be a developer tester and a user tester at the same time, testing that one thing. But that would be kind of a weird case. Um, but oh, absolutely, you can be all these things in different degrees. They're just patterns. So, for instance, the administrative tester pattern is a pattern that says your focus is getting the task done. So, people who really focus on to do lists and they really like to see passes and fails, they just want to get to done. That's what satisfies them. I am really not an administrative tester. I don't like being one, but I like working with them because they help me get my work done. Because they're reminding me that, look, time's running out. You got to get moving, James. Come on, we got to do this other stuff. I'm like, all right, I'll wrap it up. And it's the administrative type person who does that. My wife is an administrative type person. She wants to get things done. She runs the administration of my company and does all the. She'll say something like, "Do you want to get a haircut?" And I'll go, "Sure." And then she schedules it. I will never schedule it. I would just say sure and then forget to even said I wanted a haircut. But she actually says, okay, then it shall be scheduled. I will schedule it. It's going to happen now. And then I forget all about it until she says, look at your calendar today. And I'm looking at my calendar. Oh, I have a haircut. Okay, that's how I know it happens. It's all magic. So I have a lot of appreciation for administrative type people. I'm not really one of them myself. The second thing is, so let's compare that with the social tester.
Yeah.
The social tester is someone who accomplishes their testing work with a primary focus of communicating to people. So they connect people together, they talk to people, they make friends, they find out who's working on what. And there are people who are very talky and they get help from other people to get work done. And other people are, if they feel charmed enough, they're happy to help them out. My brother is a very social tester, and he wrote an article once about becoming a tester at Microsoft, and how he wasn't really a technical guy, and he didn't really have time to take classes or read books. So he just would ask people, can you show me how to do this? Can you show me how to do that? And he would just get people to help him do things. And once he would learn, he would teach other people. and he uses his social skills to get by. So that's how a social tester operates. And then yet another kind of tester is an analytical tester. The analytical tester likes to turn everything into a mathematical problem. So I'm very much an analytical tester. I like making spreadsheets and tables and models, formal models, and then writing software that automatically generates test cases. That's what's fun for me. I like doing that for other people. I just can't get enough of that kind of testing. If I could do that kind of testing and get paid enough for it, I would be very happy. That's why I like court cases. Court cases involves a lot of analysis and then reporting on the analysis. So those are just some examples of how these are just patterns. You can clearly be analytical and administrative. You can be analytical and administrative and social. I'm pretty social, and I'm technical. To be a technical tester is to have the skills of a developer. That's what I mean by technical tester. Are you essentially a developer? You could be a developer on the development team if you wanted to, or if they pressed you into that. But you prefer testing, or your job is testing, but you have the skills of development. That's just what I mean by that. So I'm like half technical tester, half analytical tester, and half social tester. Not very much administrative tester, and not very much empathic tester is also something that I'm not really comfortable with myself. I didn't really recognize they existed until relatively recently, but now I believe in them.
So let me ask you this. So if you're talking about somebody being a social tester and an empathic tester, so when we try and show empathy towards something or someone, we always sense that, okay, there is some kind of an emotion coming into it. So that emotion may affect the results of what we are trying to achieve. So
Yes.
how do you think, or what do you think should be done to have a balance in such situations, so that we are not
Balance of what?
balance in terms of trying to avoid the bias? You know, we are focused on getting a result, getting an objective. So how do we do that? How do we balance ourselves to
Well,
get the best?
the way empathic testers operate is through intuition of based on their uh, attempt to get inside the skin of the user. They want to be the user, feel what the user feels. What they're doing is they're turning their mind into a pure instrument of sensitivity to the same things that are going to bother the customer, the ultimate user. So they put themselves in that position, and I didn't recognize that was a kind of tester for a long time, partly because I'm not that kind of tester, but partly because people who do that, they often can't explain that they're doing it. You say, how do you find these bugs? And they go, I just like use the product the way a user uses it. And then I would hear that and I would say, oh, you don't really know how to test. You're just a user. But then I met some people who I concluded were very, very good at testing, even though they couldn't explain how they were good at testing. They could show me, and when they did show me, they were showing me that they were inhabiting the mind of the user and being very sensitive to what they imagine the user to care about. So this is inherently biased in a way, but you're biased in exactly the way that one might hope. You're biased in favor of users who are the people who are going to be hit by these bugs.
Yeah.
So I would say it's, in a way, it's being biased, but in another way, it's being exactly useful in your biases. Um, it is a problem though, because if you take the empathic approach and someone says, explain exactly why you think this bug is worse than that bug, it can be hard to explain. You just go, it just feels worse. It's just obviously worse. And that can be very frustrating for people who are trying to, talk with you when you can't explain your risk analysis system to them. So it's, what? It's not so much bias, which is the problem. The problem is connecting with other people and achieving a consensus.
Right.
That's the thing that's hard,
Yeah.
because you're just you and you're stuck inside your own head when you're in this mode. So how do you deal with that? By learning to talk about it, by developing the skill of talking about the patterns by which you move, by making more of what is tacit explicit. Not everything. It's always going to be lots of stuff that stays tacit knowledge, just embedded in your mind and your body. But I suggest that you learn and practice the vocabulary of test methodology and test ontology, so that you can make yourself understood by people whose support you need. Because if they don't understand you, they can't support you. That's the danger of being silent. There's a lot of people I try to convince to learn to talk better about testing. And they say, well, really, it's not a problem for me. I don't really need to talk about it. Like, okay, well, it's good that you're working for your best friend right now, but what if your best friend quits? What if you start working for someone who's skeptical about whether you're really worth having? You know what's going to happen? You may get fired, and they may decide to outsource all the testing to China because you couldn't tell them what was special about you. And so it could be really dangerous to your job security.
Yeah.
If you want to make more money than the least paid testers in the world, ultimately you're going to have to tell someone a story about why you're worth more.
Well, yeah. That's you know a great thought, but that also makes me think. So we spoke about the social tester, we spoke about the empathic tester, the technical tester. Now, you said they are people who have skills like that of a developer.
Yeah.
So
Someone
one
who
of the
could
most
be on the
popular
development team.
roles, yeah, so one of the more popular roles that is very prominent, that was again started by Microsoft, was that of an SDET, a software
Yes.
development engineer in test. And
Yes.
and I was thinking of a question, but somebody's gone ahead and asked it. So let me just highlight that question.
Ah.
The question is, what are your thoughts on SDET roles? Is it about coding or testing? Or is the job delimiting the scope of testing?
I uh I guess it depends on the SDET. It seems to me that the SDET idea doesn't really. It's more about being a developer. It's not about being a tester. Um, that's what I worry about, and it seems to me when I encounter SDETs, they more see themselves as development people who happen to be in testing, and maybe I just haven't met an SDET who seems really passionate about testing. But at the same time, I could be an SDET. I'm a developer who turned to testing. My identity, though, is tied up with being a tester, not with being a developer. I can code. I do code. I use coding in my work, but I wouldn't go to a development conference, a developers
Right.
conference, and get up and speak about the right way to code. I'm just not interested in that. And I haven't educated myself in that. There's lots of people who do that way better than me, even if I did educate myself in that. I go to testing conferences and I have lots of opinions about testing. That is true. I'm an artisan of testing who also can code. And there's a lot of testers like that who see themselves as testers and they also can code. I don't know how many SDETs feel that way, uh, but the ones I've met, I mean, especially the Microsofty ones, they seem to really be more about development and not really about testing. Uh, uh, the culture of testing at Microsoft essentially was driven underground or collapsed entirely right around the year 2000. And before that, I had lots of friends at Microsoft uh, who I knew to be excellent testers, but all of them were hounded out of Microsoft. They didn't respect good testers at Microsoft. They decided that everyone had to be a developer, and they ignored the damage that does to testing culture. Because the thing is that development culture is more powerful than testing culture. It's more all-consuming. You have to really know who you are if you want to maintain your testing focus as you associate with developers and learn development and all that, because you could just get stacks and stacks of books and just study development and technology all the time. There's so much that you need to know to be good at development that it just drives everything else out of your head, unfortunately. So that means that testing is always fragile. It's compared to the testing mentality and testing skills is like a rare orchid is that you have to keep in a hot house and just the right temperature. It's very easy to create a hostile atmosphere that destroys testing. Just destroys testing effectiveness.
Well, talking about developers who moved into testing, I am of course one of them. So I am also a
Oh, I
tester.
didn't know that.
I started my career as a content developer first, and then moved into development. Did some Java programming, and then one fine day, one of my managers said, "Oh, you've got to do testing," and I was like,
Yeah,
"I don't know anything about it." He said, "You will learn," and
yeah,
I've been and I started testing, and never looked back. So
yeah.
it's been
Well,
a great.
for me, just recently, I've been working with Tricentis, helping them develop test tools, and I've been forced to do development because I'm supposed to define the tools and just write the requirements, right? But I have to prototype and try out some ideas. So I ended up doing a lot of coding to show the real developers once they join our team. I need to show them this is what I'm talking about. I need something like this, but I want you to code it better than I did and make it scalable and all that stuff. But I've developed all this prototype stuff. And so being a developer recently, it really drove home to me why I want a tester. Because I'm testing my own stuff right now, but I don't have time to test it deeply. I only have time to test it in the shallow ways, and then I have to get on and write more stuff. I can't take 4 days off and just test my query engine with ever more interesting tests, which is how I would do it if I was a full-time tester. I want someone to do it. I know how to do it. I just don't. It's not worth doing if it pretty much is okay. It's more important for me to develop a new part of the prototype, and it's not important for me to more deeply test. But boy, would I like to have a tester working with me right now.
Well, I would like to pair up, and I volunteer if I can, you
Well,
know.
we're coming to that. We're coming to that point where I might be able to. to do that. We still have to do some
Yeah.
more development in house before we're ready to show it to people outside. But I'm eager to engage with more people in the community. And by the way, I will, because I want to make sure that this tool that I envision, that real testers actually will like it, other than me. They're not selling it to me. So I'm going to be showing it off to my friends in the fullness of time, at the appropriate time, when there's still time to change things, to make sure we're not on the completely wrong track. So I'm going to use I'll announce stuff, I'm sure, on the test chat group as soon as I'm
Oh,
able to. And I'm
that'd
sure
be
there'll be people who say, sure, I'll look at your tool and complain about it.
yeah.
And then I'll be doing demos and all kinds of stuff. We're trying to develop this tool, which will make a tester feel free.
Nice.
I
Okay.
want a tool that's like a magic carpet for testers, that makes you feel powerful when you use it, and that you can do things that you can't do otherwise. It's not really an automation tool, although it involves automation. It's sort of a note-taking tool, but it's more than that. It's there's but I want it. I'm trying to design it to be the kind of tool that as soon as I start testing, I bring up this tool, and then I take all my notes in this tool, and it keeps track of all kinds of things for me. And that's sort of the idea, that it's a portal, a one-stop place. But to do that, I need to not just think like me. I need to understand how other testers think. So I will be coming
That's
to
how
you probably at some point.
that sounds really cool. So, we've been talking so much about testing, and we know that uh, testing is exploratory, but how do we bring up the value of exploratory testing to the management? Because management in a lot of organizations feels that exploratory testing should be a small part of whatever, you know.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
how do you show the value?
Well,
Because
the first thing I show is the absurdity of the idea that testing would not be exploratory. One of the ways that I show the absurdity of the idea is I point out to managers that none of their work is scripted. I go, like, if scripting is so great, how come you're not using a script right now to talk to me? How come you're just choosing your words in real time, like, regular people do in conversations? Aren't you worried about that? Don't you think it would be more efficient if you wrote down all the things you were going to say at the beginning of the week and then just read off those cards? Someone comes up to you and says something, and you say this, and you don't say anything. You just go, wait, and then you pick up some cards and you flip through them, and then you read from the appropriate card what you had written in your voice case management system. uh, it's ridiculous. Management doesn't use management cases. Development doesn't use development cases. Why do they think that testers can only work if
the
they have
test,
some kind of script? It's ridiculous. So one of the other things I say is there's never been any scientific evidence that this is a better way to test. This is just some guy's idea from 1972, and other people were too polite or something to say that's nonsense. This is nonsense. There's the entire history of human thought, of science, of philosophy, of management points at exploratory processes are how we work. It's how everybody works. Now, in addition to that, I have a whole set of papers on the subject. I've got papers about unstructured decision processes and case studies of that sort of thing. I've got papers on the psychology of learning. I have a book called Play as Exploratory Learning, which is a whole theory of play in humans as being an exploratory form of learning and very essential. And so, in other words, if people say, oh, exploratory testing, that's just playing around, I go, are you familiar with the research on play, or are you just speaking ignorantly about these things? So because I'm aware of the science, the relevant science behind exploratory processes, and I can refer to that, talk about that. I can talk about heuristics, for instance, and heuristic processes. I can talk about the phenomenon of sense making and how that works. I can talk about cognitive biases and how decisions are made, and how risk analysis happens through storytelling processes, all of which are exploratory. To say that before we decide to do something, we have to learn to do it. Well, learning is an exploratory process as well. There's so much support in any field of science you want, but in the scientific literature, the sociology of science, so much support for the idea that the most rigorous things that you could do. What is the most rigorous kind of thinking that we can imagine? How about proving mathematical theorems? How about when mathematicians rigorously prove mathematical theorems? Well, there are books about how to prove theorems, and they
Yeah.
tell you technique after technique after technique, all of which are exploratory. To be a mathematician is to be profoundly exploratory in your work. And yet that's the most rigorous kind of logical thinking that there can be. So what's really amazing is how anyone could think that testing is not exploratory. How can you talk yourself into something that's so completely against every intuition we have? And here's why. Here's why they talk themselves into the fact that it's not exploratory. Because they want testing to be under control. Management is terrified because testing is an open-ended activity, and an open-ended activity might be very expensive. It might go on forever. They don't want a cloud. They want to capture the cloud in a little aquarium and put the top on the aquarium and point at the aquarium and say, that's my cloud. That's my pet cloud. If I let it out, the mist is going to get all over everything and I won't be able to ever get it back in again. So management is terrified of testing in the same way that for thousands of years, men have been terrified of women and have tried to control women for the same reason. Our passions overflow. And so we try to control. We got to control them, and I think that the testers are in the same kind of position that we need to be controlled, because people imagine that if we're not controlled, then the whole project will be derailed, because testers will say anything, and testers will say, "I want to do more testing," and you can never prove that they shouldn't do more testing, so you can never tell them no. Just like I can't tell my wife no.
Well, so there is an interesting question, again related with management. What if the management is administrative and they are behind pass or fail numbers? How do you deal with that?
The main way that I deal with, there's two ways that I deal with that are the most helpful and constructive ways that I deal with that. Like, one is I deal with this as a trust issue. I say, look, think of all the people you work with and you just trust them. Like, you hire a plumber to fix your plumbing. You hire an electrician to fix your wiring. You hire a doctor to do medicine on you. All these people are professionals. You don't talk to them and say, wait, what is can you quantify the value of that insulation on that wire, electrician? Can you quantify the difference between plastic pipes and lead pipes? And no, we just say, look, do what you do it the right way, do it in a responsible way, fix my plumbing and go away. What I tell my clients is, you hired me because I know how to test. Let me do my job. If you don't trust me to do my job, you should fire me and hire someone who you do trust.
Yeah.
So that's one angle, is to say this is really about not trusting me, and I want to solve that problem, because once I solve that problem, everything else goes away. I have this happens to me every time I'm on a court case. Every time I'm on a court, when I'm on a court case, I charge a lot of money, and my clients always are like, "Oh, you charge so much money." And at first they say, okay, we're going to call you every day, 5 o'clock. You're going to give us a status report, and we're going to approve whether we want you to work for another day because you're so expensive. Always by the end of, let's say, 3 weeks, now they don't want to talk to me every day. They're like, oh, we'll call you each week. And then by, 6 months later, I can hardly get them on the phone. Because why? Because they trust me. Because they go like, oh, gee, he's doing his thing. We trust him. We don't need to supervise him. We got better things to do than to supervise this guy. He's got it under control. And I love that. I love earning the trust. So that's one thing, is earn trust. A second thing that we can do is I give them alternative numbers. Instead of doing passes and fails, instead of counting test cases, I suggest, if I developed this whole protocol called session-based test management.
Yeah.
Session-based test management I developed for metrics crazy people at Hewlett-Packard. They love metrics at Hewlett-Packard. And they were demanding metrics. And I was just saying, no, I'm not going to do it. No. And then one day I started feeling sorry for them. And I was talking with my brother over dinner, and we realized, we don't need to say no, because there are some kinds of things that we can count. What if we count time? Well, the problem with counting time for testers is that testing gets mixed in with lots of other things. So 5 hours of testing might not be 5 hours of testing at all. It might be 10 minutes of testing and 4.5 hours of meetings. So we decided, what if we created these things called test sessions, which were uninterrupted blocks of testing time. You would say, I'm starting the clock, I'm on a test session. And then you would go for 90 minutes, and then you would stop the clock and say, I've done one test session. Then we could count test sessions, and it would be meaningful, because if I said I had 10 test sessions, it wouldn't be like saying I had 10 test cases. If someone says they have 10 test cases, that might be 1 week of testing. That might be 10 seconds of testing. That might be each test case might be a huge cathedral, or it might be a tiny doghouse. And what's more, you get problems when you're counting test cases, because someone will craft one test case and then they will just copy it with tiny variations. Well, that's kind of like saying, here's a hamburger, and then you take a picture of it, and then you print that picture 20 times, and you say, here's 21 hamburgers. Well, only one is actually eatable as a hamburger. The others are just pictures of that hamburger. It's not 21 hamburgers at all. Yeah. So if you're copying test cases and changing them, you can't even count them anyway in a meaningful way. So if you count time, though, that has a substance. The amount of time that a tester is really trying to test and not being interrupted by things that aren't testing. So we developed this. We developed a protocol for counting sessions, for tracking them, and pie charts for different kinds of sessions and all that sort of thing. So I offer them that as an alternative. And what a lot of people do is they go, okay, I'll just, whenever you say test session, I'll just turn it into test case in my mind. And they think they're still counting test cases. They're not counting test cases, but it's okay if they think they are. That's all right. I keep reminding them they're sessions and they're not cases, but whatever. We're counting them and it's okay.
Okay, so you spoke about session based testing. Now, that brings me to my next question, and that is about test management.
Yes.
Do you think the role of a test manager is slowly becoming non existent with the advent of Agile and DevOps?
Yes, Agile has waged basically genocide against test and any kind of manager. Uh, I guess I shouldn't use a word like genocide because it's obviously a very highly charged word, but they've tried to wipe out the whole idea of managers. They just want to wipe them out. So I have a presentation I do where I've got just a big picture of a woolly mammoth. It's like, where did the test managers go? Where did all the managers go? Well, here's where they went. Agile was created by people who were really senior, and they really didn't feel like they wanted managers. They didn't want managers. They didn't deal with managers. They wanted to do things themselves. So they called themselves self-managed. But the thing is that Agile is now used by people of all levels, not just super successful independent people, but all kinds of people who are not so self-managing. And managers did really important things. Here's the kinds of things that test managers used to do. Test managers would make sure that testers were not being bullied and pressured psychologically into doing things and saying things that weren't right. Now nobody protects testers. Every tester has to protect themselves. Well, some people are good at that, like me. Like you try to bully me, that's like trying to squeeze a puffer fish. You're going to get a handful of spikes. You don't want to. You're not going to succeed in bullying me.
Yeah.
But there are lots of people who are very very easy to bully. In fact, one of my favorite testers is a woman in England who I have tremendous respect for. But man, boss after boss that she has had in the years that I've known her has just taken advantage of her softness. She's this wonderful, soft personality, not threatening in any way, charming and pleasant to be with. But she was, raised by parents who taught her to be nice and
Right.
friendly and pleasant. And she doesn't like to say no to anybody. And I keep telling her, she comes to me and says, "Oh, my boss has said I have to do this by tomorrow, create this report." He just came out of the blue. And I said, "Tell him no. Just tell him that's not enough time. Tell him you'll do it next week." "Oh, I can't tell him that." "Oh, I just feel like I want to be her bodyguard." She needs a bodyguard. Is what she needs. And unfortunately, she doesn't have one, and so she's just miserable. And the thing is, she's so talented. She has so many cool things that she can do, wonderful things that she can offer, and most of her employers never find out about it because they just say, "Shut up and do what I tell you." And so she shrugs and she tries to do what she's told. Now, see, I don't think everybody should have a suit of armor. I don't think that every soft person, and a lot of them are women, but there's soft men too, and some there's lots, but a lot of these people are soft-spoken women, and they're being told like, well, you just have to toughen yourself up, and that does something to a person. That messes with your head. It creates misery. We shouldn't need to have everybody to be equally tough and sharp and have sharp tongued. I think we should be able to have a diversity of people. And what makes that possible is good management. Good management makes diversity possible. Otherwise, here's what's going to happen, guys. If I'm on your team or someone's like me is on your team, Well, guess who's going to talk a lot? I'm going to talk a lot. Guess who's not going to talk very much? People like my wife, who's an introvert, because she's not going to talk very much. Now, she and I have worked out a thing between us so that she knows how to stop me from talking whenever she needs to. She has a kill switch that she can use. And of course, I'm super attuned. I've been married 30 years to her. I'm super attuned to her moods, so that I actually, my voice is very different. If you ever see me talk when I'm next to my wife or I'm talking to my wife, you may remark, as other people have, boy, James, you sound totally different when you're around. Your voice is really soft. I don't even notice it anymore because I've gotten so used to this. So I've adapted to her. Now, what a good manager is supposed to do is make that adaptation process easier, to make sure it happens, to help adjudicate these kinds of disputes that come up, to make sure that there's a clear scope, a clear purpose to the work, and it's not just each person's own interpretation. And we don't have that now in testing, and that's one reason why testing culture is under tremendous attack and is pretty weak right now in the industry, I would say.
So, since you spoke about testing culture, there is an interesting question. How do you build a testing culture in our organization? What are some?
Hire Rahu Parwal. That would be one step that I would suggest, based on knowing Rahul. If this is the same guy that I'm thinking of, anyway. There are certain people who have a really strong excitement about testing. They have a strong sense of themselves as a tester and as a craftsman.
Yeah,
And you when you want to build a testing culture, you have to build it around at least one person, but maybe more, who have a really strong passion and sense of themselves as a tester. Otherwise, they're just going to be pushed around and batted around by the winds of all these other strong cultures that are around them. The culture of ship it, the culture of DevOps. Think of DevOps this way. DevOps is should have been called dev livery, because it's just delivery and development slammed together. Notice that when you take delivery and development and you slam it together, what gets squeezed out? Testing, because testing
testing.
was in the middle. So it's like getting between a mother bear and the bear cubs. You're gonna get attacked if you try to get between the mother bear and her cubs. And so to build a testing culture, we need to learn to speak bear, because we need to learn to talk to people who aren't in the testing culture to try to make room for the testing culture. We better have a good story and a solid story and a passionate story that we're willing to tell about what we need, why we need it. And then you need to bring other people with you into this, which requires coaching, training, mentoring. These are social skills. If you don't have these social skills, you're going to be in trouble. You need a testing methodology that you can call your own. And here's the thing: you could take my testing methodology, but as anyone knows who's taken my classes and paid attention, what I always tell people is, I'm giving you my test methodology. You paid to take the class. Here's my methodology. But I recommend that you change it. If
Yeah.
you change it and you make it your own, that's when it will really deliver for you. If you just keep it framed as some sort of museum piece, I got this from James Bach, these are his pristine documents that I printed out myself, then it's not going to be a lived in organic thing that you really feel connected to. It's going to remain to be my thing. I don't want it to be my thing. I want to help you make your thing. And so I'll give you a methodology, but in a real healthy testing culture, you feel you own that methodology, and you change it and it becomes plastic. No, a woman I talk about a lot when I talk about this stuff is a woman named Juka Selendik, who's
Yes.
a very senior tester at Northwestern Mutual Insurance Company. She is the poster child for this. She embodies this. She and another tester in China named Tai Xiaomei. Tai Xiaomei also took my work and Michael Bolton's work, and she turned it into a new methodology of her own, which is full of the parts that I gave her, but she's rearranged everything. And she's added some things, and she's thrown things out. And whenever I talk to her, whenever she shows me this stuff, I just see someone taking total responsibility for herself,
Yes.
total responsibility for her work. She's not waiting for permission from me. She's remixed my stuff like a rap star. She's sampled my stuff, remixed it. You can see all this stuff. She even calls her methodology Buccaneer methodology. That's what she calls it, which is borrowing from my book
Yes.
about this, the Buccaneer Scholar. And
Yeah.
she thought, oh, that's nice. I'll take some stuff from there. I'll take some stuff from the testing stuff. I'll mix it all together. I'll add my own stuff. I'll change the diagrams. I'll change the exercises. She wrote a whole book in Chinese about it. And so Tai Xiaomei and Juka Selendik are two very nice ladies who are leaders and who have they're role models to me of what I hope that serious students of mine will be, because now I can point to Juka and say, look, she's innovated in session-based test management. She's invented some new stuff. I've now taken some of her stuff and I've brought it back into my official personal methodology. Now has stuff in it that Juka convinced me was important to have. And so now I feel more powerful. Not only am I proud of these students, but I'm actually more powerful and I'm smarter now because they've innovated, and I'm sharing those innovations back into the trunk, to the core stuff of my own. So I'm hoping that if you build a testing culture, that you be like them, that you adopt a methodology that you immediately remix, change, extend, that you have at least one person who's very passionate about that, and then you develop the skills of coaching and teaching. And you know what? Those skills, those are not easy, because they're, as any parent knows who wants to be a kind parent, you have to play the long game with people you're coaching. You know, you might be unhappy with things that they're doing, but you can't just hit them on the head and say,
Yeah.
stop that, any more than you can do that to a child. Because what you're going to do is you're going to ruin the relationship if you do that. You're going to ruin their confidence if you do that. You want to be building these people up. And that's a slow, frustrating process at times. And sometimes it doesn't work out and you have to fire somebody. But it's a long, slow, and difficult process to create a truly good testing culture. I want to say one more thing about it. It is easy to destroy a testing culture overnight. You can spend months and years building it, but it's very easy to destroy it. You know, it's like trust that way. It takes years to build trust, but a moment to lose trust. And similarly, if you take years to develop people into being first-class professionals, and then management changes and they say, well, follow these scripts, shut up, follow these scripts, do what I tell you. I don't care what your fancy philosophy. I don't want to hear about philosophy. Just here's the templates, follow the templates. Here's the best practices. Shut up and do it. What's going to happen is all those talented people instantly demotivated, and they're instantly looking for new jobs. And they just the entire culture just dissolves like the last scene in Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, where the guy's just dissolving, that turning into dust. just takes a minute for that to happen.
Well, so here's a question that I've had for quite some time, and I want you to help me with this. So, people talk about risk analysis and people talk about testing.
Mhm.
Do you think they are one and the same, or do you
Yes.
think they are different?
Well, they are
Wh-
one and the same.
Why?
uh, Testing is always risk analysis. When you are looking for bugs, what you're really trying to do is understand, if we were to ship this thing, what kind of terrible risks would we be taking as a business? What kind of terrible risks would our customers be taking if they tried to use the product? If I know that there are these particular bugs in the product, then I can say, I know that there's a definite risk of really bad things happening. Now, not every customer is going to run into every bug. Maybe the bugs don't happen to everybody. Maybe the users won't think the bugs are that bad. But it's definitely a process of risk analysis to be testing. That's why testing is happening, is because management wants to know, is it going to be really a bad thing if we ship this, or not a bad thing? And collect the information, analyze the information, and tell us what you think, and help. What we're really doing, of course, is we're helping them do the risk analysis for the business by giving them the information about bugs and potential bugs in the product. But we also do risk analysis before we test, because we're trying to make the best use of our time, right? So what we do is we analyze what I call suspected risks. That's where you think the bugs probably are. And then you test in the areas of suspected risk to find out what the actual bugs are. And that will tell you what the actual risk is. And then that's what you're saying when you're in the release meeting and deciding whether to release, is you're reporting on what you think the actual risk is based on the actual bugs you have or have not found. Now, you can't quite say that testing and risk analysis is exactly the same thing, because there are other forms of risk analysis which aren't testing. So you can do risk analysis but not do testing. But I'm saying that anytime you are doing testing, you
You're
are doing risk analysis. And then you might even be doing risk-based testing on top of that, which means you're doing that analysis of the suspected risks to guide your other risk analysis.
so excellent that you pointed to risk-based testing. Uh, how do you get started with risk-based testing then?
You get started with risk-based testing by deciding what are the suspected risks. What risks do you suspect? Now, how do you do that? How do you get started? Well, you use risk analysis heuristics is probably what you
Mhm.
use. But the very first thing you have to do to get started with it is you have to have a model of the product in your mind, and a model of the user in your mind, and the model of the environment in which usage happens in your mind. So, for instance, here's an example. Um, if I tell you that there's this system that delivers packages. I'm not going to tell you what kind of system it is, but there's just some system that delivers packages. What would the risks be? You might go, oh, well, maybe the package won't get delivered. Maybe it gets delivered to the wrong place. Maybe it gets damaged while you're delivering it. And you would be kind of generic in your discussion about risk. But if I give you a more specific model than just a system that delivers packages, if instead I say, well, the packages are electronic packages, in fact, they're email, so this system that delivered package is called an email server, you would go, oh, well, I was going to say that weather was a factor, but I guess weather isn't a factor now that you've told me this. I really don't care that it's raining outside if we're talking about email delivery. But if you're talking about pizza delivery, okay, now the weather is a factor again. And we have to ask how far it's going. And if it's a drone delivery, now weather is really important. You're not going to fly those drones in all kinds of weather. You're going to fly them in relatively calm weather.
Yeah.
And uh, uh, the drones can't go in certain places, and what about dogs, and what about theft, and what about bird attack? There's all kinds of issues with drone deliveries that we come up with. So the point is that when you know more specifically about the technology, when you know more specifically about the users, the more you know specifically about any of this stuff, the better you will be at reasoning about risk. And reasoning about risk is reasoning about causes and effects and the importance of those effects. Now, anyone who ever becomes a parent knows this, because before I was a father, I could just walk into a kitchen and think it's a kitchen. But as soon as I became a parent of a toddler, I would walk into a kitchen and immediately look around like I was the Terminator, and my eye would automatically zero in on like there's a glass that's going to fall over, and I would picture the glass shattering all over my son's feet. I'd picture the blood. I would say, okay, I'm moving this glass. Suddenly I'm doing risk analysis everywhere I go based on the estimated maximum speed of my toddler. And then I found that for a few years, my parent risk sense was really tuned. And then as he got older, then I started losing it again. So now he's 27, and I really don't worry about, I don't think about risks anymore as a parent. But I remember being completely oblivious to risks to children, and then being personally responsible for a child, and how that really changed how I calculate and look at things. And that's really how risk analysis works, is you're combining your own responsibility with your fears, with your knowledge of cause and effect, to have reasonable fears instead of unreasonable fears. It's not a mathematical process. A lot of people think it's a mathematical process, but it's not primarily. It's primarily a reasoning process about the structures of cause and effect.
Okay. So, what are the top three skills of a tester, according to you?
I would say modeling,
Mhm.
and I would call it general systems modeling. It would be what I call the skill. General systems modeling. General systems modeling is the ability to look at anything at all. Like a book,
Mhm.
a Shishibo toy, a piece of a laptop, a pen, a harmonica, a remote control. Look at any item whatsoever, and can I describe this item in 6 different ways? Can I describe it more completely or less completely? Can I summarize it in 3 sentences, or can I write 2,000 words about what this is? The skill of modeling is the ability to do all that kind of thing. And you have to practice. You have to practice describing things. You have to learn about different kinds of formal modeling, for instance, state models and flow models, and it can help to practice with specific kinds of models, syntax models,
Yeah.
mathematical models. And then when you practice with these, you can sort of let them go, and what's left is this general modeling skill, this skill of analyzing anything. And I recommend a book that's quite hard to read, but it changed my life and blew my mind, and taught me most of what I need to know, called Introduction to General Systems Thinking by Jerry Weinberg.
Yes.
And I read the book about 3 pages at a time, and then my mind would be blown, and I'd have to think about those 3 pages for a couple of days, and then I'd read 3 more pages, and my mind would be blown, and I have to think about it. So I suggest that you treat that book like a box of chocolates. Don't just shove them all into your mouth.
Not possible.
Savor 1 chocolate per day, Savor it, or else your teeth will rot. You'll have hallucinations. It's too hard to take it all in. But that book was profoundly influential to me. So I would say that's one thing, general systems modeling. Second one I'll say is test framing. Oh, you've never heard of test framing, you say. What is test framing? All right, test framing is the ability to relate and connect anything you do as a tester via a chain of logic all the way back to the business and the people that you work for. You should always be able to say, I am running this test case because of this particular risk I'm concerned about, because I want to see if there's a bug in this part of the product. And the reason I'm testing this part of the product is because it is important for this new capability to function as it should. And the reason it is because the project is developing this new thing. And the reason the project is doing that is because management has set this goal for the company. And so I know how everything that I'm doing is connected back to the business. So that I never say this. Here's how you know that you're not good at test framing. If you say to someone, why are you running those test cases instead of different test cases? And they go, they told me to. I don't want to be yelled at. If that's what you're saying, that's bad test framing. You're just saying, I'm doing this because I don't want to be yelled at, not because I really know it's a good thing to do. And you know what? If you think about it, that's a child's answer. That's what children should say. Children should say, well, I'm not really in charge. I'm a child. But my mother told me to do this, so I'm trusting her, and maybe you should ask her why I'm doing this. You expect that from a child. From an adult, you expect them to say, I'm doing it because it's the right thing. Because I'm a knowledge worker and I have knowledge, and I believe this is the right. I might be doing it at someone else's request, but I still have a sense that this is the right thing to do. I may be supporting them, but I think it's right to support them, and I think that they're generally onto the right track. So here's a third skill. So you got your general systems modeling, you got your test framing. Here's the third one. Okay, this is a psychological skill. Self-compassion. The skill of self-compassion. You can look it up. It's a real thing. Self-compassion. Self-compassion is the ability to forgive yourself. Because boy, are you going to need to forgive yourself a lot as a tester. Because we are constantly afraid that we're going to miss a bug and it's going to be our fault. And you need to be able to say, I made a mistake. I took the wrong path. I'm going to learn from that and I'm going to get better. And that's good enough. I'm good enough. And that's self-compassion at work. And I used to be promoting this. I didn't know it had a name. And then it turns out there's a book called Self-Compassion, and there's a whole kind of self-compassion movement. So I'm glad to have a name for this now. And I try to teach self-compassion implicitly and explicitly in my classes. And there's even a conference coming up called the FAIL Conference. You heard about that?
Yes.
Are you a part of that? I mean, I would imagine that you would be. It's a kind of thing that I would think that you would be a part of, Rajesh, actually.
Well, the speaker lineup is too good, so I'm going to miss it this time as a speaker.
Oh, so they've already failed by not having you in it.
No,
That's a
I
fail. They're going to have to learn from that failure.
Well, I am one of the participants. So and of course the test chat community is a community partner. So
right.
we will
Okay,
be
good.
there.
I'm glad to hear that. Well, I'm going to be on a panel or something, and we're going to talk about failure. But I admire the people who have the guts to put on a conference like this. I did a conference once, a peer conference with about 15 people in Estonia. Its theme was was failure. It was the theme was my worst testing mistakes. What I learned from them. That was the failure. And I criticized the speakers on the first day because I said, look, you're talking about failures that weren't really failures. It was like, I found too many bugs. It was like, I found so many bugs, the bug tracking system fell apart. What a fail. Like, that's not the spirit of this. The spirit of it is when you feel embarrassed. You feel like, oh no. Like one of the other stories I like to tell is how I almost caused a strike at Apple Computer in 1989, and it's an important story. I like to tell it. And I remember my friends on the day that this terrible mistake happened telling me that I would feel better in a week, and that it maybe seems like the end of the world today, but in a week, in a month, I would feel better. They were absolutely right. This became a really important kind of comical story of ignorance and insensitivity on my part, and a story about one of the events that caused me to grow up a little bit, as a man, as a human, and it relates to lots of things that testers have to struggle with. So you know what? I actually feel like I regret not making more terrible mistakes because they make such wonderful stories in class and people are paying me to tell these stories. So I wish I had more stories now. Years from now, your worst mistakes are going to be classes that people pay you thousands of dollars to attend. So don't feel too bad about even really embarrassing mistakes. Even things where like you got fired after one day. So, I mean, there you go.
I've got told that, because I found uh, some bugs which they were not anticipating. I once got told that I do not know how to test, and I was like, okay, I will learn. I will learn how to test, but please deal with these bugs for now. So fix them first, and I
Yes,
will really take classes. I will learn.
yes. I was fired after one day at Texas Instruments because the reason that was given is that I didn't know enough about testing, and this is right at the same time I was writing what became a best-selling testing textbook, and it was based on the fact that I twice asked what the meaning of a term was that the client was using. And it wasn't because I didn't know the definition. It's because I wanted to know what she thought the definition was in her organization. But she decided that meant that I didn't know what a test case was because I was asking her, what is a test case to you? So I'm using a consulting technique, and she decides, you
He doesn't
obviously don't
know.
know what you're talking about because you shouldn't be asking me questions. You should be telling me. Like, look, I can lecture all day long. You really want me to just lecture to you about what the right answers are? I'm happy to do that, but I thought you want me to be a little more caring and circumspect than that. I think the real reason is she just didn't like me. I think she just didn't like my beard and didn't like my personality, and she was looking for any excuse to fire me. But the fact was that I thought I would last throughout that consulting project, and I lasted one day, and I was sent home, and so I was upset about that, and wrote a really long email to my mentor Jerry Weinberg about it on September 11th, 2001. I did,
Oh wow.
and because I was writing this really long email, I turned my phone off, and I didn't have the TV on, and I was not at home. So I had no idea that 9/11 was going on until like mid-afternoon. I turned my phone on, and I've got 17 messages, and my wife's been desperately trying to contact me. Oh my God, I was like the last person on Earth to find out about 9/11 because I was obsessing over the fact that I had just been fired from TI the previous day.
Well, here's a question for you. But before you answer this question, there are some interesting questions here. So, do you mind extending this by a few more minutes? Do
Oh,
we have?
that's fine. That
Okay. Okay.
I'm here at your pleasure.
Okay. Thank you so much, and I hope that will be okay with the audience as well. So, yeah, this question is from Rahul Taralekar, and he asks, "Could you please recommend a few must-read books for testers?"
Okay, I'm going to recommend some things which you probably haven't heard of. Then, of course, I've already recommended Introduction to General Systems Thinking, although it is a tough read. I would also, by Jerry Weinberg, I would recommend a much easier to read book, which is super useful, called Secrets of Consulting.
Yes.
And if you think about it, a tester is a consultant. Whether you're full time or not, you are consulting to people. So you really need to understand how consulting works. This
Or
book
you have
is
a
full
designation,
of beautiful examples.
or you have a designation of a test consultant, just like I have. So,
Okay, there you go. So read Secrets of Consulting by Jerry Weinberg. I think you should also read The Duck That Won the Lottery by a guy named Baghini, who's a philosopher. The thing about this book is it's a book of philosophical problems that each chapter is like 3 pages long. So it's real easy to read if you're busy. You could just like open it up anywhere and just like read one little chapter. And what he does is he presents a philosophical problem. And then at the end of each chapter, he says, well, so what do you think about this? And what if we change this to this? Would that change your answer? And how about if it was like that? How would that change your answer? And this helps if you read these chapters and really work on this stuff, it'll help you practice thinking like a tester in a philosophical way. By the same guy, a guy named this guy named Baghini. There's the Philosopher's Toolkit, which is a book about all the tools that philosophers use to do philosophy. And I think most of it is about tools that testers can use to do testophacy. So those are 2 books by a guy. The fellow's name is Baghini, and he's written lots of great stuff. Okay, I'm gonna give you one more by another favorite man of mine, Harry Collins. He's a hero to me. I've met him. I talked to him just the other day. Brilliant sociologist. He wrote a book called Tacit and Explicit Knowledge.
yeah.
And you need to understand the difference between tacit and explicit knowledge, and you need to appreciate your tacit knowledge. And that book really clarified for me what is the value of tacit knowledge and how it works and how it relates to explicit knowledge. He's written a lot of books that are useful. I call him the sociologist of software testing, even though until Michael Bolton and I knocked on his door, he had no idea that any software testers were paying attention to his work. But he's really tickled that we care about what he's done, because normally he studies scientists.
Yeah.
His main body of work is studying how gravity wave scientists did their work, and he spent decades working with these guys before they ever discovered gravitational waves. He was working with these guys and writing books about them and writing books about their processes. And so he knows all about how scientists think and how they relate to each other. It's a very social process. And we realize that all his work also has to do with testers. So I recommend the work of Harry Collins.
Okay, here is a very interesting question. How to become a test architect? What is your thought?
Well, the thing about being a test architect is there's several different meanings of that term. So for some in some places I've seen test architect means the person who puts together the test strategy. So essentially the test lead, but maybe not with any management responsibility. So I've been a test architect of a medical device where my job was to figure out what is the strategy, what are all the test activities we need to do, writing out the procedures for that, and then working with other testers about that. So that's one meaning of test architect, is like a test strategist kind of person. And to become one of those people, you need to be very comfortable with testing. You need to practice testing. You need to know about lots of different kinds of testing, not just one kind of testing. You probably need to get more into the analytical side of software testing and the mathematics of it to do that kind of thing. And you also need to be good at writing, because you're going to have to write descriptions of tests and test reports and that kind of thing. So if that's what is meant by test architect, that's one thing. But there's another kind of test architect, which is like a test automation architect. And that's
Yeah.
a person who deals with the testing tooling, the technology that we're going to use to manage our regression checks. And that means you need to be technical. That means you need to learn about all kinds of tools that you might use, get very comfortable with all the popular tools that are out there, and help other people understand how they can use those tools. But one thing's in common with both those meanings of the term architect, and that is that you're seeing more of a big picture flow, and you're helping people to plug into that, to see how they play their part. So a test architect is also going to be someone who's got to be pretty good at coaching. You need to like people. You need to have patience for people. I would think a good parent would be someone who would be a better kind of architect, because parenting automatically gives you practice in that sort of thing.
But what about those who are yet to be parents? Or
Well, then I think a great way to prepare to be a parent is to become a test architect, and you probably will be a better parent. Maybe you've noticed, Brijesh, that having a child is like working for a very unreasonable boss.
oh
Like
yes.
when your 7-year-old doesn't believe that you're qualified to answer questions. I'm like, it feels exactly like I'm dealing with an unreasonable boss.
Well, leave alone 7-year-old. My 3-year-old, he will ask me something, and if I reply, he will go and validate my answer by asking
Oh,
mom. So
I
he
see.
and he does the same thing with her as well. So he will ask her a question, and if she responds, he comes to me and confirms if that is the right
You
answer.
know what's weird? I used to do that too when I was very young, and I used to wonder why I did it. I thought I was insane. I remember being a like 7-year-old, 6-year-old child, and I would ask the same question to multiple people, and I didn't know why I was doing it. I couldn't understand why I was doing it. I felt wrong doing it, but I couldn't stop myself. It was like a compulsion that I had to hear different answers or the same answer. It's not like I was expecting different answers either. Maybe I just liked asking a question where I knew the answer. Maybe that's, I don't know. But just when you said that, I remembered being a child like that, doing a similar thing. Huh.
So here's another question for you. You've mentioned your family in between. How do you do your time
I
management?
don't have a work life balance. I don't believe in work life balance. What I believe is integrating my life and my work together completely.
So it's work life
I don't
integration.
balance. I'm blended. I'm blended. So here's how I blended it. I started a business which I gave to my wife. My wife is the owner of the business. In fact, 15 years ago, it saved my marriage that she owned the business, because we were separated. We were considering getting divorced. And it turned out it was too hard because the business made it too hard for us to get divorced. So we decided it was easier to patch up our differences, and we did. So my business saved my marriage. What
Well,
I gave it to my wife so that she would be part of the business. She has to be part of it, and so she runs it, and I run the consulting part of it. She runs the administrative part of it. Our life is just completely embedded in the work. How I actually do the work-life balance is I work all night while she's asleep so that I can concentrate and focus. And then during the day, I sleep some of the day, and then I wake up. And if I do any work during the day, then about every 30 minutes, I go downstairs to find out what she's doing. Then I end up watching a video with her. I pet the dog, and then I come back up here. So I'm constantly oscillating between being up here and downstairs where she lives. And I just go up and down and up and down and up and down. And that's my work-life balance. It's really a work-life integration
yeah,
um, rather
in
than a
fact, there is a
balance.
term. In fact, there is a term called work-life integration, and I did not know about it until very long when I saw people writing about it on LinkedIn, and people saying, "Oh, people are talking about work-life balance. How about integrating it? How about
And the key thing with integration is it's always got to be your choice.
yes,
Uh, and so I choose how to mix my work and my life. It's all I always feel that it's up to me. And my wife advises me, and I frequently follow her advice about what that mix should be. Sometimes she says, "I'm telling you, you have to go to sleep now." And, on one level, I can say, she can't tell me what to do. I'm a dangerous man, But on another level, I feel so flattered that she cares enough about me to tell me to go to sleep. It's wonderful to be loved enough that somebody wants to order you to do something so that you'll be healthier. And I like when she does that. And she kicks me out of the house and says, "You have to take a walk now. I insist you take a walk." And I can say, "No, you can't tell me what to do." Or I can say, I see what you're saying, I guess I'll do it. And so I rely on her to help manage this balance that I'm speaking of, this integration that I'm speaking of, because it really isn't a balance, it's an integration. But I can do this because I have control, because I run my own business, because I only work by the hour. I don't have full-time work. And that's stressful in one way, but it gives me so much control that compensates for the stress of not having as much income as I might have if I had a steady salary. I found that having a salary and working full time made me very anxious in a way that was instantly resolved as soon as I started my own business. And if I hadn't started with my wife, it wouldn't have worked. If she was outside my business, I don't think it would have worked for me. It has to be a shared thing. So it's something we've been sharing for 22 years.
awesome.
As of a month from now, I think we will have been in business 22 years. And we've almost gone out of business several times, but we always manage to come through one way or another. And so I would just not like to leave home. I love the pandemic because it means that I have not left home for a year. And I love that because I've been traveling intensively, and it really wears me down to be away from home so much. So I love being at home. I love being with my dog. I love taking time off every day or taking days off when I feel like I can't be productive. And it's all under my control. Of course, sometimes I just don't have clients, so I'm involuntarily not working. But for the most part, I have a choice of whether to bill hours or not in any particular time. I just think they have to be all together. And to be all
Yeah,
together, you have to love what you're doing, And here's one other thing I want to mention that makes it integrate with my life, and that is the people that I get to talk to. When students come to me and they want advice, so there's a woman named Rehab who's been on
Oh yes.
LinkedIn, and you know about Rehab. Well, I had a wonderful conversation with her yesterday, just yesterday. I hadn't talked with her for a while. She called me. We had like an hour and a half Zoom conversation. She caught me up on all the things she was doing, and it gives me energy when people who are serious students of mine, who are taking what I'm doing and moving forward with it, and then they want to share with me what they're doing. It gives me energy. It gives me learning. It feels like it's part of my normal life, and I'm on one level. My life sounds crazy because look, I do like 5 Zoom calls a day every single day of my life. But then you think, yeah, but these are all Zoom calls with people who I really like. I like working with them. I like talking to them. Michael Bolton contacts me. We work on cool stuff every day. It's always under my control. I can always say, I'm tired. I don't want. I'm not going to be available for Zoom today. But I end up doing it because it gives me energy, gives me a sense of meaning in my life. When your life is full of meaning, then the whole idea of work and life just kind of dissolves into one work of art. And that's what I hope you can achieve too, because it's certainly been wonderful that I'm not rich. In fact, I'm constantly worried about money. But if I can only do this and also have enough money, wow, that would be fantastic. But I'm rich enough that I've so far been able to eke out a little bit of this independence and a little bit of this stability. But I still am holding out for my son to write a best-selling novel and buy me a house.
So James, if you were not doing any of this, the testing, the consulting, programming, what would you be actually doing otherwise?
I'd be a social philosopher. I might be. I would definitely be a teacher of some kind. Probably maybe teaching critical thinking. I would do a lot more mathematics. Probably. I enjoy mathematics, but I'm probably not good enough to do it as a sole professional thing. But I would. I'd like to be inventing things, tinkering, and if I had a big enough garage with enough equipment, I'd probably do that. But I like teaching, maybe even teaching kids. But I kind of like teaching adults better because they take care of themselves better. So teaching, coaching, advising people, analyzing things, and doing anything that involves analysis. I would love to be I'd love to work for the CIA, except for I would want to tell everybody all the secrets. So they really, really should not work with me because I would talk to everybody. Oh, look at that cool thing that I'm working on. There really are aliens. Let me tell you all about it. Yeah, I found out we faked the moon landing. I would, I want to do, I like everything about working for, as a spy, except the fact that I would have to keep secrets.
Well, that would be interesting. Well,
I would be the world's worst spy in that sense, but I would love it.
you did mention that the way you talk now versus the way you talk in the presence of your wife, they're different. So maybe we should do another episode of this one with your wife also along with you, so
Yeah,
that we see
you would
what
see
is
that I'm really projecting right now, and that hurts her ears. So I quiet myself down quite a lot. Are you okay, honey? Is there anything else you want me to do? My voice goes higher. I do whatever I can to not be present a threatening visage for her and to not rattle her nerves. But it's effortless these days. I don't even notice I'm doing it. But it took me a good year learn how not to freak her out. And it's good. It's good practice for an extrovert to be able to do that.
So here's the question. What are some of the most engaging testing communities you are a part of? Do you recommend any other testing communities?
Well, there's a community that I run, Michael Bolton and I run, which is the Rapid Software Testing Slack that we make available to people who've taken the Rapid Software Testing classes, and it's actually quite vibrant. I mean,
Oh,
there's
yes.
a lot of people are posting on there, so that's good. Now there was a community that no longer exists really, because the people have grown up and started their own companies and like spread to the four winds, that I was really excited to be a part of. It was the context driven testing community in the United States in at the turn of the century. It was really vibrant until about 2012. It started kind of falling apart, and the reason it fell apart was mostly, I think, a falling out between me and Kem Kaner. It's because Kem Kaner kind of was the heart of that community, and a lot of us just revolved around Kem, but then he dropped out, and you need people who build community. Like, for instance, you guys have a real community builder by the name of Brijesh. He's got this weird name. It's hard to pronounce. Brijesh. It always sounds like I'm drunk when I say it, but I'm not. His name is really Brijesh. And he's a community builder. When you have someone at the core of a community who's a magnet, who's everyone will revolve around them, and you won't even notice how important that center person is unless they go away. So Brijesh, don't go away, because this community is a vibrant community because of you and the people that you attract to you. And there's another test community, which is the testing tribe, which I have a lot of appreciation for.
Oh, yes.
And Mahesh, I always forget his last name. Mahesh Chikane.
Mahesh Chikne, yes.
Chikane? Okay, I don't even know how to pronounce his name. I'm terrible with names. That's the thing about me. I have no ability for names. But I really admire him. And again, he's put in a lot of energy to pull things together. There's Lalit
Bamre. Lalit Bamre.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
Yeah.
The guy who runs the Tea Time for Testers.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Again, he has caused people to revolve around him. I think I appreciate Anna Roisman and her like Test Masters Academy, she calls it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people in that community that I can't talk to, so I'm not really part of that community. But I have tremendous respect for Anna Roisman. I have seen Anna Roisman coach somebody in a difficult situation that was it was brilliant coaching. And this was back when I worked for her. She was my client. I was teaching, and I witnessed her coach a tester, and she's just got such excellent coaching skills. She's a philosopher in her own right. She's just a very thoughtful woman. I have a tremendous respect for her. So her community, even though she involves herself with people that are people who hate me, and I don't like them, so I'm not really part of that community. I don't blame her for that. That's not her problem. But I do think that anything that Anna Roisman's doing is going to be good. So then there are also little communities that are dotted around. There's a community in Ukraine. I think they call themselves Commit. I think they just started this thing called Commit, and it's this group of testers in the Ukraine. There's people in Sweden. There's all around the world. There are these little kind of semi-local and local groups that work together. I mentioned Tai Xiaomei. She's just kind of doing her own thing in China, and in
Yeah.
China they're kind of cut off from the rest of the world. So I don't have much connection there, but I have tremendous appreciation for her. I'm not a fan of the Ministry of Testing. I have a big beef with them, so I'm not into Ministry of Testing stuff. I feel like Ministry of Testing, they're really into parties, but I'm not interested in parties, so it's not for me. They're really interested in people feeling good, and I would rather be with a group of people trying to be the best they can be, not just to feel good, but to push themselves and achieve excellence. That's what matters. That's what matters to me. And well, I guess that's all I can say about that right now.
Well, so I'm also a part of the test tribe, and in fact, I just love Mahesh and the work that he does.
Yeah.
Tea time with testers with Lalit. Uh, I'm a part of the Test Masters Academy with Anna.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, you are?
oh yes,
Oh,
and
cool.
in fact, I once wanted to discuss something with her, and it was, I think, 2 a.m. her time, and she was ready, and she was
Really?
like, "Let's do it." And it's just her passion, the energies that she has is incredible. And like you said, I mean, she's got a brilliant coaching style, you know. So
I think so. Yeah.
yeah, I completely agree. So yeah, there are multiple communities, and what's good to see is that there is a lot of mutual respect. For example, we all love the test tribe, and the test tribe loves what we are doing, and
Right.
you're always
Well, you notice a community I didn't mention is the ISTQB community. I don't think there's respect. No one I respects them.
I also don't talk
I'm
about
not.
that.
There's a community that put together the ISO IEC 29119 standard. I don't have any respect for them at all. I mean, there are other testing communities that I think are despicable.
Yeah.
And so every community I mentioned is kind of a grassroots, context-driven testing, humanist community of testing. I'm a humanist. I'm interested in humanists, people who treat people well. And when I say treat people well, I mean who see the humanity in testing. A lot of people think I don't treat people well because I argue and debate and they feel confronted. But I actually argue and debate because people matter to me and I want to defend what's right. And that means I'm going to be unpleasant sometimes to my fellow experts who I think are falling down on the job. That sometimes that means that people feel like I've insulted them, and sometimes it's because I've insulted them. But I felt they deserve to be insulted.
Well, here's a question for you. Just
Yes.
out of curiosity, are those origami models on James's desk?
Well, I promise I have no official relationship with this company, but I am addicted to these things. This is called a Shishibo puzzle.
Yeah.
What they are is they've got little magnets that's like plastic, and there's little magnets in them, and then you can make all kinds of different shapes. I can turn this into a cube. I can make it into a dodecahedron, and then you can put them together and make bigger things. And my wife got me one of these and then two of these. And now I'm just addicted to it. I'm making ever larger structures. But they're expensive, so I only get them on special occasions when I've been especially good. She gets flowers. I get more Shishibo puzzles. And so I just every day I'm trying to play and making new shapes. It teaches you about geometry and I guess origami too. But I'm mostly it's a geometry puzzle there's nothing you're supposed to do. It's not like a Rubik's Cube. It's more like, what can you build with it? They're more like Legos. But that's what they're called, the Shishibos.
Yes.
And
Yeah, they're
it's
expensive.
done by a company called Toys in Motion. And I'm not going to get any royalties at all, but I guess I'm selling these to lots of people because on every Zoom call, people are seeing me do these, and a lot of people are asking me about them. So there you go.
Well,
I'm
that was
addicted.
a really, really interesting conversation with you, James. We have in fact been speaking for more than 2 hours now, and in fact,
All
we
right,
have
I'm going to go to sleep now. I've been up all night, and now it's time for
well,
me to conk out.
thank you. But before that, one last question that I would like you to answer is how to be an excellent tester. What skills to be mastered?
What a question to have the last. I mean, this is. I teach whole classes on that, but I'll pick one. I'll pick. I'll pick one thing. You want to be really excellent. You want to be a really excellent tester. Okay, then you need to gain the ultimate faith. You need to hold on to one article of faith that non-testers and people who aren't excellent testers can never quite bring themselves to commit to. And this faith, this is the only faith that we have as testers. And when I take my tester hat off, I have faith in my wife, I have faith in my son, I have faith in lots of things. When I put in my tester hat on, I've got no faith in anyone or anything except I have faith that this product that I'm testing is full of bugs. I have to believe in trouble. To be an excellent tester, you must believe in trouble. Convince yourself without evidence. That's why it's a faith. Without evidence, before you've ever tested something, there's Rehab. I love Rehab. I was just talking about you, Rehab. You must convince yourself. In fact, Rehab and I talked a lot about faith yesterday because she was teaching me about it because I was trying to help her understand how much value that I got from our relationship. And one of the things that I get from her is she helps me understand what it means to live a faithful life, which is, it's very different than the culture that I grew up in and that I'm part of. And so I feel like she's helping me with that. But as a tester, my faith is that there's trouble. I believe in trouble. Every time I test, I'm expecting to find a bug. If you are testing and you're expecting everything to work and you're trying to prove that it works, you cannot be an excellent tester if you believe that everything's going to work. You have to believe in trouble in order to maximize the chance that you will see trouble. But the weird thing is that as a teacher, I believe in the best of my students. I don't believe that there's trouble in my students. I guess I'm not really testing the students. I'm trying to build them up, and that's a different thing. But to become excellent, again, you have to root out the problems that might be in you, and that does require you to have faith that there must be something wrong with me in order to become excellent. I'm going to have to find out what that is. That's just really emotionally difficult for people. A lot of people just want to believe in good things and not make trouble. So that's the one thing that I'm going to say. There's many, many other things, but I'll pick that
Absolutely.
one.
There are RST classes that you could take to learn some of those
Oh,
skills.
I see. There are, yes. I teach the stuff online. You can sign up at my website at satisfice.com. Michael Bolton is always trying to remind me to just, hey, mention our classes once in a while. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, Brijesh. I'm just in a mode of trying to help other people
Yes.
with answers. But yes, I teach a number of different classes, as does my colleague Michael Bolton. We teach the same classes. We teach them online. In fact, I have a class coming up that's in an Asia-friendly time zone uh, in May, and some Indians have signed up. I think we've got 12 people so far signed up, so there's room for more. And I hope more we get more signups. It'll be fun.
Awesome. I'm pretty sure you will get more signups. We will put out a link of the next Asia friendly class in the link of this particular video, so that people
Yeah,
who watch this video can actually get to know where to sign up. So it it
yeah.
it has been more
And I
than two
think
hours.
we're offering a special deal to Test Tribe people at Mahesh's request. In fact, I put on this Asia version because Mahesh specifically asked me to. So this is a by command of Mahesh class. And so there's a special deal we're offering to people who come through Test Tribe, and I guess it's on the Test Tribe website or something, and it's mentioned. So go look at that.
Go look. Yeah.
All right. So anyway, thank you very much, Brajesh, for letting me
Thank you
do
so
this.
much, James. I mean, 2 hours more, 2 hours 10 minutes, and we're still talking, and there is still a lot we could possibly go ahead.
You'll
We
have to put that as a
definitely,
two-part thing on YouTube.
yeah, we definitely need
Okay.
another part at least, and possibly with Lenore as well, just to have some fun.
Someday you'll see Lenore. You'll see what you'll
Yeah,
understand.
it was an absolute delight, like always, James. Talking to you is such a learning experience every single time. Thank you so much.
All right.
Uh, get good
Thanks.
rest and enjoy the
Yep.
weekend.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye bye.